just give you that heads up. Well, thank you for joining us for the fourth workshop in our August Breast Feeding Awareness Month series. We're really excited to have so many of you joining us today. And I'm just like still shocked that we're at the fourth Wednesday in August. The month has flown by quickly for me. But we're really excited to have our speaker Sierra here today. So I'll get us started with a few introduction slides, and then we'll shift it on to Sierra to take over. I don't see our board chair on, and she was planning to do the land acknowledgement, and I am honored and privileged to get to take over from her and read our land acknowledgement. The Minnesota Breastfeeding Coalition acknowledges that each person here is inhabiting land that has been the traditional home of Native Americans. This unceded land is home to over 10,000 lakes and the mighty river Ojibwe people call the Father of Waters, and Dakota people call River of the Falls. This land has been home to many Native communities and is now home to 7 Ojibwe reservations and 4 Dakota tribal communities. These families have long known that breast milk is a baby's first medicine, and yet colonialism and historical violence has broken the tradition of breastfeeding for many Native families and communities. Minnesota Breastfeeding Coalition is dedicated to partnering with Indigenous families and communities to reclaim and restore breastfeeding as the first food of choice for all babies. This is the fourth of our series. So if you haven't had an opportunity to attend the other sessions that we had earlier this month, they will be available on the NBC YouTube page. So when those have been uploaded, we'll send a link to anyone that has attended any of the workshops, and they'll be available to share with others at no cost. So you can catch up on any of the amazing speakers that we got to hear from the first 3 weeks if you were unable to attend those. So we're here to celebrate National Chest Breastfeeding Month, and the theme this year is Together We Do Great Things, and we can see that from the community that is joining together across the state to really lift up breastfeeding this month. So we kicked off with World Breastfeeding Week, Step Up for breastfeeding, and then week 2 was Indigenous Milk Medicine Week, strengthening our traditions from birth and beyond. Last week was Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Breastfeeding Week, the theme of telling our own stories and elevating our voices. And we're excited to close out with a Black Breastfeeding Week theme with Black Breastfeeding Week 2022, 10 Years, a New Foundation. So these are the speakers that previously did our presentations earlier this month. And as I mentioned, if you missed those presentations, they'll be available to watch on demand shortly. And we are excited to welcome Sierra Dillard, who wears just so many hats, a certified doula, a yoga instructor, healing justice, peer support, WIC breastfeeding peer counselor, mother extraordinaire has many talents. So we're really excited to welcome and pass our baton today to hear from Sierra Dillard. So Sierra, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. I am going to bring up my screen and we will get started. Okay. All right, so reclaiming and celebrating cultural breastfeeding in the Black community. The reason why the UNITY is capitalized at the end is because community is about everyone, and we have to remember that. So why are we having this conversation? Good question. In the United States, Black women have the lowest breastfeeding initiation and duration rates compared to any other race, also the highest infant mortality rates. Why? Well, from the beginning of time, we were stolen from our land to be enslaved as a people here in America, separated from our children, and denied the right to nourish our own young. We were made into wet nurses. And if you don't know what wet nurse means, basically we were made to give our most nutritional milk to slave owners' children, and then giving our children the last of our milk, sometimes not giving our breast milk to them at all. Our bodies were and still are over-sexualized. Black babies are dying at 2 to 3 times the rate of white babies, although 3 in 5 pregnancy-related deaths are preventable. Black women are less likely to utilize advantage of nursing stations due to labor jobs. Labor jobs meaning things that are hard on your body, that do not allow you the opportunity to take breaks and utilize the nursing stations at work. We are also incarcerated at a disproportionately amount, placed in prisons and separated for our children, and that's higher than most of our counterparts. We are also less likely to get help or feel comfortable with help due to trauma or lack of resources for our own community. Let's watch and see a video that speaks to this. Oh no, let me go back. I'm gonna stop sharing and then put it in a different browser and share it that way. Technology, gotta love it. Can you all see this?
Yep, we see the YouTube. And when you shared it, did you click on like the sharing sound?
Let's see. Where do I click that at?
Let's see.
You stop sharing, and then when you go back to open sharing at the bottom, there's a little box that you check.
Share sound, thank you.
That's the thing I miss the most is I always forget to share my sound.
All right, here we go.
My name is Brandis, and I support breastfeeding family-friendly communities. My daughter's name is Brielle. She was born on March 27th, 2019. Because I had no friends or elders and my mother did not breastfeed, I sought out resources, books, and joined breastfeeding groups so I can be educated because I didn't know what to expect. When my daughter was born in the recovery room, she latched on with no problem. We had skin to skin, and she latched on very well. Once we were moved to the room, her blood sugar levels were checked more than once, and she had low blood sugars. So they gave her glucose gel to bring her sugars up. And after she received the glucose gel, she wouldn't latch on. We did not understand why she wouldn't latch after that. I had lactation consultants to come in more than once. It was determined that she wasn't tongue-tied, but I did pump while I was in the hospital. I kind of felt stressed and was concerned that we wouldn't be able to breastfeed at all because she wasn't latching. But I was informed about formula as an option or just being bottle fed. And I wanted to give her mommy's milk because I knew that was the best choice. So I pumped and we bottle fed, but I was still concerned. The hospital did send me home with the manual breast pump, but I didn't learn how to use it before I left. So I'm heading home. We're home with the new baby and got settled in. I tried to use the manual pump and it was not working. I was unsuccessful in getting milk. It was difficult. I realized once I got home, I had no breast pump. The hospital didn't send me home with formula, even though they discussed it as an option. It was late and the stores are closed, and I was unprepared and I was stressed and I felt like I was failing already as a mother. I didn't have a breast pump. I have a newborn crying. She's hungry. I'm doing my best. She's not latching. Fortunately, I had a friend that brought me a pump the next morning, and I was able to pump because of that blessing. It was automatic, but it wasn't the best quality, but I appreciated it. So I was also concerned about nipple confusion with her latching on or not latching on. I didn't want her to be so used to the bottle that she wouldn't latch on to me. Then my concern was because I have flat nipples and one nipple that is very inverted, and I was worried that was the reason why she wasn't latching. But I was told that she should be able to latch on anyway. So as like just being concerned and being determined to be able to give her my milk, and I really wanted her to latch, I reached out to my breastfeeding groups and lactation consultants with WIC, and I was referred that let's try the nipple shield. So the nipple shield kind of is a protectant for your nipple, but it also extends your nipple because my nipples were flat and then one was inverted. So the nipple shield was a game changer, and it made me feel pleased and happy because we were able to have skin to skin, and she didn't always have to feed from a bottle. Her caregiver gave her bottles, so we did both. So after she started latching around 2.5 months, I felt so much better and relieved, and we didn't need a third party like the nipple shield to be involved. And it just made me happy that she was latching and I felt more normal. So I pumped at home and I pumped at work, and we still had skin to skin. My experiences with pumping, it definitely is a job, but it needed to be done so my child could have nourishment while I was gone. I had difficulties with work, having the time and a space to pump. I kind of had some negative experiences at one of my jobs. They would give me the opportunity to pump in an office in the basement, which did not have a sink and it was not pumping friendly. I also asked, could I pump in my car? And I was told that I couldn't. But I felt more comfortable if I was allowed to pump in my car. But yet and still, I worked it out. I pressed forward and just knew this was important to me to be able to feed my daughter and breastfeed my daughter and give her the best nourishment. I know formula is not bad. It's an option. I did meet people that use formula and breast milk, which is fine, but I just felt happy and proud to be able to have bonding time and to supply her with something that's so much better, had more vitamins and antibodies than formula would have. So, so I went 6 months because I didn't know how long I was going to be able to breastfeed. So I went 6 months. After 6 months, I was like, I want to go a year. And she's now 14 months. And I'm going to go as long as I can. Some days it was hard, the biting, or I'm tired, but I just wanted to press forward because I felt like that's one gift I can give her. And I also wanted to be an example to other women, other young Black women that also didn't have other peers or family members or elders that could explain or give them comfort and encouragement. So I did want to continue, and I want to learn as much as I can. And I felt proud and happy that I could give my daughter that gift.
All right, I'm going to get back to my PowerPoint here. Can we see the PowerPoint again?
Yep, it looks great.
Perfect. All right. So action plan. Things that we need to do in order to change the notion. Identifying specific barriers. Community conversations like the ones we're having today. Make space for Black women to speak up about their specific needs. Increasing access to cultural congruent care like group prenatals. Increase funding or make funding available for grassroots efforts. We need to because Black people are more likely to have health disparities, such things as allergies, asthma, ear infections, SIDS, and postpartum depression due to having to go back to work earlier than most. Not many workplaces allow babies to work with their mother, which would be a helpful opportunity, at least for the first 18 plus months. And Black babies deserve to survive and thrive. And this is a public health crisis. Touch points. Encourage and support more Black women to become IBCLCs, International Board Certified Lactation Consultants, so that we have more support from professionals who look like us. Make the pathways to becoming an IBCLC easier to gain access into the hospitals by providing funding and opportunities to become IBCLCs. Increase the funding scholarships for Black folks, specifically for Black, not just a pot of money to disperse amongst all. Provide more baby cafes. Those are places where folks can come in and learn about the basics of breastfeeding. Educate elders and partners to help support and encourage their roles of encouraged breastfeeding. This part is really important because elders and partners sometimes can be the make or break to someone's breastfeeding journey. And I feel that if we speak more directly to them, the breastfeeding person will be more apt to do those things because they have someone behind them standing and pushing them forward to continue to breastfeed or to even breastfeed at all. Improve the quality of care for pregnant women and provide prenatal breastfeeding information. The touch point for that would be inside the hospitals. it's important to discuss the journey of breastfeeding and realize that it is a journey in itself, but it's something that can be accomplished. Make more breastfeeding nursing stations comfortable and available to the working body. It is so hard to be uncomfortable in trying to pump or to even breastfeed. So we need places where people are comfortable and feel confident about getting back to work and being able to bring their breast milk home to their baby. Don't just talk about it, be about it. Here are some resources. Utilize the WIC breastfeeding peer program if it's available in your area. I'm a champion for Hennepin County WIC, and it's a great asset to the community. And it's a great asset too that we actually have peers that look like us that serve the community. And that's so important, I think, to be able to connect with our clients that we talk to on a daily basis. Become a part of the Chocolate Milk Club, which is a Facebook group for Black women in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or surrounding areas. We're having an upcoming Chocolate Milk Day this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. So I encourage people to come to that so they can feel connected to a support group and just a community of people who are doing the same things. There's a lot of social media out there, which provides a lot of support. So utilize that as a resource. Never suffer in silence. Hire a doula, and one that is educated and lactation preferred. A lot of times doulas have extra certificates. And so it's important to find someone who is knowledgeable about the things that you desire for your children, and even your birthing experience. Here is my Sade. This is my baby girl, which she has on our Eat Local Minnesota Breastfeeding Coalition shirt. This is the time we can speak up about questions or comments or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was great.
You're welcome.
Is this you?
This is me and Sade. There was a trend going on at the beginning of the year where people were putting like money and things on the ground and spelling out words. And so instead I used my stored breast milk and spelled out breastfeed. And so, yeah, this is me and Sade.
I love it. So feel free to unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you'd like, and so we can have a conversation and ask any questions. I think we're all still just in love with the baby photos that you shared.
I was impressed with the great advocacy that the video had. Beatrice, I think was her name, but for herself and for her baby, and the journey that she went and kept going back and finding resources to succeed. Wow, that's impressive.
Yes.
It's a great story.
Very much so.
Yeah, because some people think, well, it's natural, it'll just come. No, it takes work and time and resources to support. That's great.
Absolutely. I think I was talking about earlier in my own breastfeeding journey and the fact that I have 6 children and each one of my journeys with them was different. But this last journey was difficult. And the reason why it was difficult was because I am a professional in the breastfeeding world, and to have something happen that was unforeseen or unrecognizable for me was harsh. So I had Sade, and in the hospital, I noticed that she wasn't peeing. And although like 22 years ago, when I had my first child, we had to count the number of diapers before we were able to go home. In this instance, we weren't required to do that. And so I said something, but they still discharged us. And so I went home, and because I initially was supposed to do a home birth, I told my home birth midwife, who came to visit me the next day after I made it home, that Sade hadn't peed. And that was when she checked for a lip and tongue tie and noticed that she had both. And so it was really hard on me because I wasn't able to recognize that. I never really knew what that meant. I knew that, you know, some people go through that, and I've seen pictures of it, but I personally didn't experience it. And so dealing with that, and then also postpartum on top of that, it was a hard journey. Of course, we got it revised with the help of my community. I was able to even go to my own boss, Barb King, and she was able to give me some resources. But if I didn't have that, I would have struggled. And I'm so happy that I did have the opportunity to feel pushed to speak up, and also other people that were behind me saying, hey, it's going to be okay. And this is something that can get changed. I see a question in the chat that says, how do you recommend elders getting engaged and supporting WIC moms since they don't usually come to the clinic? One question that I ask my moms or my birth people is, who is supporting you in your breastfeeding journey? And I feel like that's a good way to connect the elders, but also maybe sending out literature that elders can find ways to support the moms as well, or even having groups that involve not just the birth person, but also the elders and the partners as a way to engage them. Because like I said, sometimes you'll have those people in the background like, well, breastfeeding is not working, so just give them a bottle. And I don't think that's fair, because they don't give them enough time to even get used to breastfeeding. It's not an easy thing, but it is something that is achievable. So those are my suggestions on how to get elders to engage.
That's super helpful. That's great advice. And thank you for sharing your own personal story, because I think that really resonates with a lot of us of, you know, just how much we do really rely on the support around us to meet our breastfeeding goals, and how critical that is. Even when you are really educated in this space, there's every experience is unique, and we need to continue to build that community of support. So one question I had was related to the Chocolate Milk Club. If folks are interested in referring families, what's the best way for them to help get folks connected to the Chocolate Milk Club?
So the Chocolate Milk Club is Facebook supported. So majority of the people who are part of the Chocolate Milk Club are on Facebook. So you do have to go on and ask to join the group. There is questions before you are accepted into, and one of the requirements is that you have to be a breastfeeding person. So and Black. So you can't just go because you're pregnant. They are going to accept you after you have had your baby. So it's not more so a prenatal group, but more so afterwards, and a support group for that.
Awesome, thanks. We do have one more question in the chat from Joa. It says, what did you find in your community that the nursing mother is lacking knowledge or skills so we can better support the breastfeeding mothers?
What I often hear a lot from birth people, and I try to be respectful because I realize that everyone does not identify as a mother or as a woman. So as birth people, the things that I tend to see lack of knowledge is a lot of people say, I can't make enough milk, or my baby doesn't like it, or when I'm feeding my baby, I'm trying to latch them and all they do is keep crying. Those sort of conversations are happening almost every day that I call and talk to my WIC breastfeeding peer clients. And so what does that look like? Or how I ask a lot of questions like, how do you know that your baby's not getting enough? And they'll say, well, sometimes the baby just falls asleep, or they'll say, someone told me that because they're crying, that means they're not getting enough, those sort of things. And then I'll say, well, how many poopy and wet diapers is your baby having? Or how often are you putting the baby to the breast? Or are you doing skin to skin? Because even having, a shirt barrier can cause sometimes that milk to not be as the best that it could be if those barriers weren't there. So, when your baby's at your breast and able to knead at your breast, sometimes even with Sade, she'll pat my breast and it's like, oh, she knows here it comes, or it's helping to get those milk receptors to keep going and keep flowing. And so we tend to, want to bundle our babies up or put too much on them. And that's okay. But while you're breastfeeding, it's best to do skin to skin. So I think that's some of the things that I hear a lot of times. And then just lack of knowledge, period. People think that just because, and I'm not a person to put down formula. I think formula is a great opportunity to feed your young. So if that's something that you need to do, then by all means, feed your baby. That's what's important. But lack of knowledge should not be the reason why you choose not to breastfeed. We have breast to feed our young, and no other mammal gives their baby other milk. We're the only ones who do. And again, and it's not to shame anyone, but I think it's easy to give up and it's harder to keep trying. So, just asking questions, and again, having those support people behind you to acknowledge the things that you may not know, and then also having support groups that can encourage you to keep going, or seeing someone like you that may be struggling, but they're keeping at it and crossing out all those things that could have caused you to quit, just like we've seen in the video. Can you share how you handle a situation where the partner does not want the birthing parent to breastfeed? So I think that can be challenging simply because partners sometimes get on you about that. And I myself have experienced those issues before, and it's like, why don't you just give the baby a bottle? And it's like, but I want to give my baby the breast. And so I think just, encouraging them to say that maybe start for small amounts of time. Like tell the partner, hey, okay, well, I'm going to try for the first 2 months. And if after the first 2 months, things aren't going the way that we have planned, then maybe we'll talk about it again. But I just feel like, keeping them away from, the full choice of wanting to breastfeed, or just kind of keeping them at bay. And then also just giving them knowledge about what the benefits of breastfeeding are, because the nutrients that are in breastfeeding, we cannot find anywhere else. Formula cannot replicate breastfeeding at all. And so it's in the world that we live in right now today, and all the things that are going on, COVID, the flu, colds, those are things that breastfeeding helps combat. And so if we even give them the knowledge, like, this is the reason why I'm breastfeeding, this is the benefits to breastfeeding, I think partners hearing that would also give them a way to feel like, oh, okay, well, this is a good thing for my child, and I want what's best for my child, so why not try it? You're welcome. And I think also one thing that I feel is important in the Black community is like, don't talk at the Black community and act like the expert is not them, because at the end of the day, they are the experts. They're the ones going through the issue. And so you got to come alongside them and figure out what is the best way to teach them. Everybody is not the same learner. Some people are visual learners. Some people like to hear things. Some people you have to lead by example. So just kind of getting to their level and hearing them, and not just hearing them, because we can always just hear somebody, but actually listening and supporting them is the best way, I feel like, and the most helpful. And if you don't know the answers, don't act like you do. Say that I may not know the answer to that question, but I will find the resource for someone who does, and I will get back to you. It's so hard to hear from people and say like, oh yeah, I went to this provider and they just threw all this stuff at me, and I didn't even get to understand or relate to topics that they're talking about, because they just went to jargon or acronyms or things that I don't even know. And that is harder for them at the end than it is with them coming to you with the concern. So try to just come alongside them and get to know them for who they are and the things that they're experiencing on a personal level.
Those are great reminders for really that the family that we're supporting is the expert, and how we can kind of be there as that resource, but not that they are still the ones that are leading the way, and we're along to support.
Absolutely.
Well, definitely feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have something, or put the questions in the chat and we can read them out.
I have a question about helping people with the whole return to work thing, because that's a real challenge for many people. And I was struck by how the woman whose name I've already forgotten in your presentation was saying how she wasn't able to pump at her workplace. She was not even being allowed to pump in her car. That's kind of hard. That's hard to get my head around, that people aren't allowed to do that. And I know each situation is separate. Each workplace is different. People have to figure out how to negotiate that. But I talk to people about this a lot, and I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about the best ways to be helpful and to guide people in that negotiation that has to happen with their workplace to make their breastfeeding easier.
Well, I know that there's a new law in the state of Minnesota that requires the employer to allow breaks for breastfeeding. And so I think mentioning that to them is an opportunity for employers to also have places and spaces for them to do it. I may be wrong, but I thought that was also a law that they are required to have a comfortable space for them to do so as well. So, I know it's hard sometimes to go to your employer and say, hey, here's the law, but let's just be real. It's the law. And so if it's causing them a disruption in what they feel they want to continue to do for their child, you have to go at them with the law. And then there are also ways to speak to people if they're not abiding by that as well. So I think, just encouraging them to maybe, hey, start with having a conversation with their employer and say, hey, this is my situation. I would like it if you could give me a comfortable place and space to be able to breastfeed, because this is what I would like to do for my child. And then if they can't respect that, then taking it further and contacting the law about what's going on at their workplace.
Thanks. It's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, it is. And it's unfortunate because, my husband is one person that will be somewhere and he'll like put the cover over me, or he's like, so like want to be secretive about this breastfeeding journey. And I'm like, no, we don't do that. First of all, she's sweating under this cover. It's hot under there. She can't breathe, and nobody else goes and hides when they eat their food. So why should she have to either? But again, it goes back to our bodies being over sexualized and the fact that people think that breast is just for enjoyment. No, breast is to feed our babies. And so I think just having those conversations, and then just places encouraging moms to feel comfortable to breastfeed, or birth people to feel confident to breastfeed wherever they are. So maybe, you know, there can be a logo and, you know, something saying like, hey, we encourage breastfeeding here. I know one place is Hy-Vee. I get excited when I go there because I see they have a nursing station actually inside of their grocery store. And so you can go there and it's a nice chair, it's a TV, you know, comfortable chair, you know. So more people need to get on the bus of wanting to support that, because it's important.
The links with the videos from what was done with Minnesota Breastfeeding and Minnesota Department of Labor are very good. They're brief, they're in different languages, so they're a great resource.
And I'll put a quick plug in for the Minnesota State Fair. We'll have a lactation nursing nest at the TPT booth. So if folks are coming out to the fair this year, there'll be a quiet place to nurse or pump at the TPT nursing nest. And then there's a couple other locations. So I can drop that link in the chat for those sites. Because yeah, I think it's really important, Sarah, like you mentioned, just to see that sign that says, breastfeeding is welcome here. It's encouraged. It's the law, but until it's normalized, we need to have those encouragements visible to continue to move the needle on really normalizing it.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
even in places of worship, grocery stores, wherever, places of work, all those places need to have those logos available, because people need to feel like I can be comfortable wherever I go to feed my baby.
I think, too, just, as individual, people who talk one-on-one with another person who's returning to work, is to say, hey, have you started a conversation with your employer? Or have you gone to HR and asked them? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that there is a law, and it's a really good law. And some of the resources that are in the chat here have really good talking points with your employer. And I know that starting that conversation early, even in pregnancy, can really help. But just say, who could you talk to at work? Who is that person that you could talk to, so they don't feel so alone? Hi, Sierra.
Hi, Barb.
I feel like going back to work for moms is very hard, or even like going back to school. And I see that a lot, where it gets harder when they have to pump. And I don't know if a lot of people quite follow the law all the way. I know of a mom who give her time to pump and extra time to pump, but there's no comfortable place. And I was just wondering, like, do you guys have ideas of what to tell moms in that situation? Like, they have a stock room, but they don't have an office, so she ends up pumping in a bathroom still. But yeah, so
Yeah, I think, and again, I may be wrong, but is there the law that says that they have to have a comfortable, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, reiterating that, and like Barb just said as well, having that conversation prior to them returning and saying, hey, I noticed that there may not be other people who breastfed here, or I've never noticed that there was a space for that, but I'm coming back to work in such and such weeks or such and such days. Is there going to be a space provided for that? So being proactive instead of being reactive about the situation, I feel like is a better approach. So that maybe they can prepare for that or find somewhere, you know, that they normally may have not thought about, to give that opportunity. And if, you know, like the woman said in the video, if they did have a space, but it's not where what you would deem as appropriate for you, then where can I? And if it's in my car, then I'm going to go to my car. And that's just a conversation that we have to have. And you have to respect that.
I just wanted to mention that for people, as far as that compliance with the law, I think that it's really difficult for new parents sometimes to be advocating for themselves well. So they're going to do what they can with their employer, but it can maybe be helpful just to let them know that they can call the Department of Labor and talk to somebody about their situation, and that person can tell them what some of their options might be. And also, typically it's not like the employer gets in trouble or you have to file some kind of complaint that feels very legal. A lot of times these situations are usually resolved because somebody from the Department of Labor will talk to the employer and just kind of explain to them what needs to happen, and can or even brainstorm with the employer about how they can be in compliance with the law, and it doesn't have to be a hugely negative situation. That they are there to sort of help bridge that gap between the employer and the employee. They're not there to just we're going to find out the employer and we're going to punish them or whatever, right? They're a resource. So it can help to just encourage them to go ahead and have, if they're not feeling well about how it's going talking to their employer, to just call and talk to somebody at the Department of Labor and see what their options are.
And who do they talk to? Like how do I direct people? Because it comes up all the time.
I think it's in the videos.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I already wrote them down. So
Okay.
I'm taking many notes.
And I don't have a ton of personal experience with this, but this is just what I've heard about how it works.
Because it's so difficult for people. Well, it's just difficult for just many people. It's difficult for people who don't have a lot of control over their workplace and control over their supervisors and things. It's also really hard for people who do. I saw a woman yesterday who's an oral surgeon, and she's like, "Nah, there's no way. They don't give me any breaks. I just go from one surgery to the next." And like, she has her own practice. So I told her about the laws and you know, things like that. But this is just such a huge deal for people. It's just huge.
Well, and you're talking about somebody who would be hard to replace. For somebody who's in a job where they feel like they would be easy to replace, an unskilled type position, that's very intimidating to go to the employer. So although I think sometimes people are surprised because they're afraid to go, and then when they do go, they get better than they thought, which received better than they think it will be.
Yeah. Great. This is super helpful. I really appreciate it. Maybe it was kind of a side topic, but I appreciate it a lot.
This is Joanne Wesley. I just wanted to voice in on this because this has been a topic that's been near and dear to my heart as well. And especially after having worked at Hennepin County Medical Center and seen so many women having to go back to work long before a 12-week, they're back to work a week afterwards, and not being able to continue to breastfeed because they were too afraid to approach an employer. But the law has been in place since 1997 in this state, and was upgraded again in like 2012, and and now we're looking at the Pump Act. It's a federal legislative piece, and trying to get women like that surgeon, like teachers, like other people who are finding difficulty to pump. But the law does state that it needs to be a space that is, a private space, not a bathroom, or not a toilet stall or bathroom stall. And so I think it's important that we know that. And what happens when you try to approach an employer is they don't really care if it's a great thing for you to do. What they need to know is what's in it for them as an employer. And what's in it for them is they're going to have a healthier mom, healthier baby, less absenteeism because that baby is healthier. Mom is not missing work because the baby is sick. Mom is perceiving the company to be much more family friendly. They are more likely to stay employed there. There's a whole lot of advantages for an employer, and approaching it from that angle. And there's all kinds of information out there about what's in it for the employer. And I think that's the approach we have to take in a lot of those situations, because they don't have a clue. The other thing is to remind them that this is food you're feeding your baby, and we don't prepare food for our family in a bathroom. And while that sounds like I'm stating the obvious, you can't even know how many middle manager men are clueless as to what you're doing with that breast milk. Clueless. And that sounds weird, but it's absolutely true. And so I think we need to find more ways to get employers in our communities on board to understand the importance of this. I know I recently just approached Walmart to make sure that they had an employee pumping room. And then I said, what do you do for your customers? And this is in a rural community here about 80 miles west of the Twin Cities. They have a wonderful area in the back of the store that used to be layaway that is no longer. I asked them to put a mama pod in there or build a lactation room there further. They said, well, they can use the family bathroom. I said, well, we don't feed babies in the bathroom. And they hadn't thought about that. But there are some Walmarts down south that do use mama pods in their facilities. And that would be a nice place for a mom to be able to comfortably step aside, go nurse her baby if she felt like she wanted to be in a private space. So there's lots of places that we can begin to think outside the box and try to help employers to begin to see, your customers here, if it's a store, would appreciate a lactation room. I hope your employees have one, and one that's appropriate. The Walmart here went on to tell me the color of the paint in the room and the whole 9 yards, because they were proud that they had the room and that somebody was asking about it. So, and our state fair does it. A lot of our county fairs have little lactation spaces. So I think we just have to keep pushing and pushing, because the law is there. And it's just the awareness around that law that is lacking.
Those are all big, 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 big facts. I put a stamp of facts on that. And thank you for saying all of that, because that was so real and authentic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Hillary up in Duluth, up in northern Minnesota. I'm a public health nurse at a county agency, and I have to echo what was just said too, and share a little anecdote, which was I have some of the stickers to bring into businesses that are for hanging up that say breastfeeding or chest feeding allowed, and that I've had some pushback from businesses like, well, of course it's allowed here, but they have like it's a place for Fido or whatever, so they'll advertise that it's a dog friendly agency or like business, but then like not understand that they should also put up a sticker that says there's a place for feeding our babies. So I've had some really interesting conversations. So thank you.
We had a little conversation in the chat with a question about if hospitals are hiring IBCLCs of color who are not RNs or advanced practitioners. And so I don't know if anybody else has comments. Anne had noted that Fairview typically hires RNs or other types of healthcare providers, and they're working on advocating for that to be broadened. And then Erin noted that it definitely depends on the hospital. And so I don't know if others have any comments on that question.
I do. Thank you for bringing that up, Carrie. This is Joanne Wesley again. And there are hospitals that require the IBCLC to be an RN. It is a union piece of that. And so you would have to find a hospital that doesn't require that. And those can sometimes be really hard to find. Obviously, I'm not an RN, but I am an IBCLC, and Regions and Hennepin County Medical Center are two places that you can get a job and not be an RN if you are an IBCLC. But if you're looking at like the whole Abbott Northwestern system, that you have to be an RN for. And so there are different places, and that seems a little odd to me, because, my thought has always been that, the RN can always get pulled to the floor, And the non-RN IBCLC cannot get pulled to the floor in times of shortages for an RN position. So I'm obviously pro non-RN IBCLC in a lot of those situations to keep lactation going. And so if we can just get some hospitals to understand the importance of that, it would be great. And I feel really privileged to have been able to do that and work my whole career in a hospital, still working, and not have to have the RN behind my name.
Well, I want to thank Sierra for joining us. That was a wonderful presentation and a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to share and to help us celebrate Black Breastfeeding Week. And we're excited for the Chocolate Milk Club event, Chocolate Milk Day celebration coming up. There's also an event for Black Breastfeeding Week in Rochester. And then if anyone knows any other events happening that we should get the word about, let us know so we can share that on NBC social media and on our events page for NBC. So thank you all for joining us. We will be sharing the recordings of all of these really wonderful presentations. And so you'll be able to, share them with colleagues and friends to watch at a later time. And then we also will be sharing some of the resources shared at all of the presentations so that people can, I know it's kind of hard to, try to keep notes as you're listening to the presentation. So we will share some of those links and resources shared. So again, thank you so much, Sierra. What a wonderful presentation. And I hope everyone has a great rest of August. And tomorrow is the kickoff of Black Breastfeeding Week. So we have a whole week left of celebrating and lifting up voices from the Black community. And yeah, hopefully we can get more and more IBCLCs in our system so that we can have families getting the best support. Thank you so much.